My name is David, and this is my wife, Amanda.
This is Jack, our baby.
And I guess my testimony is one of the dangers of backsliding. I grew up in a Christian home. My father's a pastor. My mom sang and she played music for the church, and we went to Christian school. Siblings, 4 siblings, and it was only in college that I really started backsliding, because my major was in history, but I had a minor in anthropology. I really wanted to do archaeology, and anthropology was sort of a route through that. And so I did a lot of studying of archaeology and a lot of biological anthropology, and they heavily propagated the theory of evolution, and I didn't take it to heart until many years of allowing it to sink in, and then I started seeing the world through that lens and started developing a real type of worldly rationality and logic-based belief system. I became a secular Buddhist, and which is a non-religious type of Buddhism, and Stoicism. And Christianity really took a major back burner to that, and I started to just kind of view it as, well, I just believe in Jesus, and that's basically the end of that. And I think I would pray every maybe once a year or two, and I started getting influenced by the way the media portrays the world through such darkness and stuff, and I felt like the Buddhism was the only way, and the Stoicism was the only way, and I completely neglected the Christian approach, the true approach, the truth. And it was many years, about 12 years later, that I finally come back to Christianity through a series of events that the Lord was leading us as a family up to, and it culminated in the birth of our son, and with the pregnancy of our son, and through that I was seeing that we needed more positivity in our lives, because the way the world portrays things is through such tragedy and depression and darkness. And I just saw, well, true Christians have this light and this hope, and I wanted that for our son so much. And I didn't know that the Lord was leading me through a series of events that would bring me and my wife into that as well. It wasn't just about my son's hope at that point, it was about us. And I was at my client's house and at my work, and they had a Gideon Bible, and I turned to the help section at a low period during this process, and it just started to make sense. The scales that had previously been in my eyes towards the Bible were being removed, and I just started weeping, and I just started feeling convicted. And from that point on, it's been a journey of just absolute growth, and from far before where I was, I didn't know about the Holy Spirit, and I didn't know about the true love of Christ and what He did in His sacrifice, to the extent I did when I this second time around. And I just see this as the Lord pulling us back and magnifying His presence in our lives. And yeah, that's basically my story. The rest is history. My dad recommended Heritage Church, and I just see it as the Holy Spirit guiding us, and I can see that this community is so blessed, and the congregation is so gifted, and they really do love the Lord. And there's just the presence of the Holy Spirit on it, and I just thank you, and I thank the Lord first and foremost for His grace and mercy.
Yes.
So that's it.
That's it. I strayed from Jesus for well over 10 years. I was very much entrenched and influenced by this world, and as a consequence to that, I felt very lost and broken. You know, having a relationship with Jesus was a very foreign concept to me. I knew I needed something over the years, just spiritual, but I just didn't know what that meant. So I turned to Buddhism, yoga practices, meditation, animism, even Egyptian cat worship was fascinating to me because I am a cat lady. You know, I was doing all these things that were so unfulfilling when ultimately what I needed was Jesus Christ. It was like drinking salt water all the time, you know, and what I really needed was the living water. I believe that God really used my pregnancy to guide me back to Him. I was so involved in New Age practice. I was doing like astrology, zodiac, studying zodiacs. I was even journaling my own birth charts and believed that if the sun and the planets and stars aligned in a certain way, it explained my personality and it predicted my future. You know, I was just really involved in all that, and I was doing like idol worship with crystals, thinking that crystals could heal my past trauma, and it was just all these things that draws you further away from Christ and closer to the devil, because I was doing these things yet feeling more insecure, more sad and depressed, even suicidal, just lost than I'd ever felt before. I had really dug a hole for myself, and I was dying in that hole until I got pregnant. And my husband was the first to be convicted, and he began to pray and do all these things, and he was praying for me, and it took me months to finally come around when I was just so exhausted of feeling depressed and sad and empty, and the biggest feeling was feeling really homesick, and I was confused at what that meant. I would call my mom, I'd call my dad, and it seemed like nothing helped. You know, I realized now that it was God trying to return me back home to Him. And one week in November, I remember getting on my knees and just crying and praying for Jesus to change my heart. And I just prayed and prayed. And I mean, it took overnight. I was convicted overnight. I woke up the next day and my heart was completely changed. Like all of the unhealthy habits that I had, all of the addictions, I was no longer a prisoner to myself. I didn't feel like I was even interested in those things anymore. It was very strange and hard to wrap my head around, you know? So I just kept praying and praying, and further along I got, the less painful I felt, the less pain I felt, and the more closer and closer I felt to God. You know, my heart had softened. I was no longer this just hardened shell of a human being, you know, and it was just an amazing thing. And I owe it to my husband, my baby Jack, and of course God, for convicting me and really changing my heart. And so I share my testimony today to acknowledge my family and of course God, honor God, and say goodbye to my old self and be reborn again by getting baptized. So thank you so much for listening to me.